Now, Taylor's family isn't struggling. Her dad works as a financial advisor. Her mom is a homemaker who used to work in marketing. They are comfortable. They live in a nice house. Taylor grows up with everything she needs. But from a very early age, this little girl is different. She is obsessed with musical theater. Like, genuinely consumed by it. She starts performing in local theater productions when she is barely old enough to read a full script. She is in Grease. She is in Annie. She is in Bye Bye Birdie. She is up on stage at every single opportunity, giving everything she has to every performance. And here's the thing about Taylor, even as a small child, she doesn't just like performing. She needs it. There's something in her that only makes sense when she's on a stage. She also starts taking vocal lessons and acting lessons. And at 11 years old, she convinces her mom to drive her to New York City so she can hand-deliver demo tapes, actual physical tapes, this is before everything was digital, to every single record label she could find. 11 years old. Think about what you were doing at 11. Most of us were worried about what to have for lunch or whether our best friend was still our best friend this week. Taylor Swift was knocking on the doors of Sony and BMG with a demo tape in her hand, asking them to sign her. They all said no. Every single one of them said no. But Taylor doesn't crumble. She doesn't go home and cry and give up. She pivots. She decides that if they won't notice her as an actress or as just a singer, she needs something that sets her apart. She needs to be a songwriter. Because songwriters, real songwriters who write their own material, those people have something that can't be replaced. So she learns guitar. She teaches herself. She practices until her fingers bleed. Literally, that's not a metaphor. Guitar strings on a beginner's fingers cause real pain and she pushes through it. And she starts writing songs. At 12 years old, Taylor Swift is writing original songs. And they're not bad. They're actually kind of incredible for a 12-year-old. Because Taylor has this gift, this ability to take a feeling, even a complicated, messy, confusing feeling, and turn it into something clean and simple and recognizable. Something that makes you think, yes, that's exactly it. That's exactly what that feels like. She's got it at 12. She just doesn't have a platform yet. Now here's where the story shifts. Taylor's mom watches this kid work and sacrifice and get rejected, and she makes a decision. If Taylor is serious about music, and she clearly is, then they need to move somewhere that gives her a real shot. Nashville, Tennessee, the home of country music. The place where careers are made and broken, where every third person on every street corner has a guitar case and a dream. The Swift family picks up and moves to a suburb of Nashville called Hendersonville. Taylor is 14 years old. Let's be clear about what this means. Taylor's dad has to find work in a new city. The family uproots everything. All for a 14-year-old's dream. That's a lot of pressure to put on a kid. And Taylor feels it. She knows what her family has sacrificed. She doesn't waste a single day. She gets herself a meeting with a music publisher called RCA's development deal. It's not a full record deal, it's more like a trial run. They'll work with her, develop her, see if she's got what it takes. And for a while, Taylor works with them, writing songs, going to meetings, learning the industry. But then something happens that will define the rest of her career. RCA wants to wait. They want to develop her more. They want to hold off on putting out any music. In the music industry, this is actually pretty common. Labels sign young artists and then sit on them for years, sometimes forever. Taylor says no. At 14 years old, Taylor Swift decides that she is not going to sit around waiting for someone else to decide when she's ready. She walks away from the development deal. And then she gets herself a meeting with a man named Scott Borchetta. Scott Borchetta is in the process of starting a brand new record label. It's called Big Machine Records. It's so new that it barely exists yet. There are almost no artists. There's almost no money. It's a massive gamble. Taylor signs with Big Machine Records. Everyone thinks she's crazy. Why would you leave a major label development deal to sign with a startup that might not even survive? Why would you take that risk? Because Taylor Swift looks at Big Machine and she sees something that the major labels aren't offering her: creative control. At Big Machine, she will have a say in her music. She will be able to write her own songs. She will not be molded into whatever some executive in a suit decides the market wants. She will get to be herself. And that bet on herself turns out to be one of the smartest business decisions in music history. Let's skip forward to 2006. Taylor is 16 years old. Big Machine Records releases her first single. It's called Tim McGraw. Now, think about the name of that song for a second. Taylor is a 16-year-old girl, and she writes a song named after a famous male country artist. Not as a tribute, as a reference, as a way of anchoring a love story in something real and recognizable. The song is about a boyfriend she's about to leave behind when she goes back to Nashville. She writes it during math class. She plays it for Scott Borchetta, and he just knows, that this is it. Tim McGraw comes out and it doesn't explode overnight. It doesn't immediately top the charts. But it does something almost more important. It connects. People hear this song and they feel something. They feel that specific kind of summer love about to end sadness, and they feel it exactly as Taylor intended them to feel it. Country radio starts playing it. It climbs the charts slowly, steadily, the way a real hit does, not a flash in the pan, but a slow burn. And then in October 2006, Taylor Swift releases her debut self-titled album. Taylor Swift. 11 songs. All written or co-written by her. The album is good. Really good. Our Song becomes a massive hit. Teardrops on My Guitar crosses over to pop radio. For a 16-year-old debut, it outperforms almost every expectation. But the music industry is still treating Taylor as a novelty. A cute kid. A temporary thing. Nobody is yet saying this is going to be a generational talent. They have absolutely no idea what is coming. It's 2008. Taylor is 18. And she's about to release her second album. She calls it Fearless. And the name is not an accident. Because this album is Taylor Swift being absolutely fearless, writing songs about high school love and heartbreak with a kind of emotional precision that makes grown adults stop in their tracks and say, wait, how does she know that? Love Story. You Belong With Me. White Horse. Fearless. These songs are inescapable. They are everywhere. Country radio loves them. Pop radio starts playing them. Teenage girls are memorizing every single word. Mothers are listening in the car and tearing up. Boys who would never admit to listening to Taylor Swift are listening to Taylor Swift. Fearless is a phenomenon. It sells over 1 million copies in its first week. It goes on to become one of the best-selling albums of the entire decade. And at the end of 2009, Taylor Swift does something that had never been done before by someone her age. She wins the Grammy Award for Album of the Year. Album of the Year. The biggest Grammy. The one that matters the most. The one that says you are the best, most important musical artist of your moment. Taylor Swift is 19 years old when she wins it. She becomes the youngest artist in history to win Album of the Year. Let that sink in. 19 years old. And she gets up on that stage, in her golden dress, completely overwhelmed, and she gives this genuine, emotional speech that makes even the most cynical people in that room feel something. Because you can absolutely tell, that this is real. This isn't a performance. This is a kid who dreamed something impossible and watched it come true. But here's the thing about Taylor's story. Her highest moments always seem to come paired with something that tries to knock her down. And the most infamous knockdown in music history is coming. It's September 2009. The MTV Video Music Awards. One of the biggest nights in pop music. Taylor Swift has been nominated for Video of the Year for You Belong With Me. She's 19 years old, she's on top of the world, and when they call her name as the winner, she walks up to that stage like she can't quite believe it's real. She starts her speech. She's beaming. She says, I always dreamed about what it would be like to maybe win one of these someday. And then Kanye West walks up onto the stage. He takes the microphone out of her hand. And in front of the entire audience, in front of millions of people watching on television, Kanye West says, Yo Taylor, I'm really happy for you, I'll let you finish, but Beyoncé had one of the best videos of all time. One of the best videos of all time. Then he hands the mic back. And walks off the stage. The audience is stunned. Some people boo. Some people sit in silence, not sure what just happened. Taylor stands there, alone on that stage. Microphone back in her hand. Speech unfinished. The moment stolen right out from under her. She doesn't cry. She doesn't yell. She just stands there. And later that same night, Beyoncé wins Video of the Year for another award. And in one of the most genuinely gracious moments in VMA history, Beyoncé invites Taylor back to the stage to finish her speech. The internet, at this point, is mostly on Taylor's side. Kanye is widely criticized. He eventually apologizes. Things seem like they might be okay. But here's the thing, this moment is not over. Not by a long shot. What happened on that stage in 2009 will echo through Taylor Swift's life for the next decade in ways nobody could have predicted. Taylor doesn't let the VMA incident stop her. She does what Taylor Swift always does. She turns the pain into music. Her third album, Speak Now, comes out in 2010. And this album is notable for a very specific reason. Taylor writes every single song on it entirely by herself. No co-writers. No collaborators. Just Taylor. This is her way of responding to critics who are already starting to whisper that maybe she didn't really write her own music. Maybe she had help. Maybe she wasn't as talented as everyone said. Speak Now is her proof. Back to December. Mean. The Story of Us. Enchanted. 11 completely solo-written tracks that are so emotionally layered, so lyrically detailed, so clearly coming from one specific person's brain that the critics have nothing to say. Or, well, some of them still have things to say. Because with success comes scrutiny, and by now, Taylor is big enough to attract real, sustained criticism. The most common critique: she dates too many people. She writes too many songs about her exes. She's using relationships for material. This criticism follows Taylor for years. It comes with a particular kind of meanness, the suggestion that she is calculating, that her heartbreaks are manufactured, that she is somehow exploiting the men she dates. What nobody seems to be asking is, why is the guy in the relationship never the problem? Why is the girl writing the songs always the one being accused of something? Taylor notices this. She doesn't make a huge public statement about it. She just notices it. And she files it away. And eventually, she responds. In the most Taylor Swift way possible. Red. Red is the album where Taylor Swift grows up in public. This is not the sweet girl with the curly hair writing about high school dances anymore. This is a young woman writing about love that is all-consuming and all-destroying. About loving someone who is bad for you and knowing it and staying anyway. About leaving and missing them and hating that you miss them. All Too Well. Let's talk about All Too Well. This song is, and many music critics will back me up on this, one of the greatest breakup songs ever written. It is detailed and specific in a way that great literature is specific. It is about a scarf left at a sister's house, about dancing in a refrigerator light, about a grandfather's house, about a man in his 30s who makes a 20-year-old feel small and then forgets her completely. When Red comes out, the version of All Too Well on the album is 5 minutes and 20 seconds long. And people lose their minds over it. They call it the greatest song she's ever written. But there's a secret. A rumor that circulates among the most dedicated fans, the ones who show up to every show, who analyze every lyric, who have built an entire culture around interpreting Taylor's music. The rumor is this: the original version of All Too Well is 10 minutes long. 10 minutes. A 10-minute song that Taylor wrote and recorded and then trimmed down to 5 for the album. This rumor lives in the Taylor Swift fandom for nearly a decade. We'll come back to it. Red is also notable because it is the album where Taylor starts truly crossing over from country to pop. We Are Never Ever Getting Back Together sounds nothing like country music. It sounds like pure, undeniable pop. Country radio plays it. Pop radio plays it. It becomes her first #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. The country establishment starts to get nervous. Taylor is too big for their format. She's drifting away. They're going to lose her. They're right. Everything changes. Taylor Swift makes the most dramatic genre pivot in modern music history. She looks at her record label, her team, her fan base, and she says, "I'm going country no more. I'm making a pop album." She calls it 1989, after the year she was born. the same year of her birth that she would later name an album-defining era. And she doesn't just make a pop album. She makes a great pop album. One of the defining pop albums of the decade. Shake It Off, Blank Space, Style, Bad Blood, Out of the Woods. Every song on 1989 is enormous. The whole album sounds like it was designed in a lab to be perfect, but it doesn't feel that way. It feels alive and urgent and fun. Taylor also removes her entire back catalog from Spotify at exactly this moment, pulling her music from the streaming platform in a statement about artist compensation. This is bold. Streaming is the future of music and she knows it, but she uses this moment to make a point. Artists deserve to be paid fairly for their work. The music industry takes notice. 1989 sells more than 1 million copies in its first week. The Grammys notice too. In February 2016, Taylor Swift becomes the first woman in history to win Album of the Year twice. Back-to-back decades, 2 wins, history made. At the Grammy ceremony, she does something important. She uses her acceptance speech to address, directly, the critics who have been saying she doesn't deserve her success. She says, "I want to say to all the young women out there, there are going to be people along the way who will try to undercut your success or take credit for your accomplishments or your fame. And they might be in your industry, or your school, or your family room, or on the internet." She doesn't name anyone. She doesn't need to. Because everyone watching knows exactly who she's talking about. Let's talk about Kanye West again. Because we have to. In 2016, Kanye releases a song called Famous. And in this song, there is a lyric about Taylor Swift. The lyric is degrading. It refers to her with a word that I won't repeat, and it implies that Kanye made her famous. Before the song comes out, Kanye claims he called Taylor and that she approved the lyric. Taylor's team says that's not true. That she was not given the full lyric. That she did not approve what was in the song. And then Kim Kardashian, who is Kanye's wife at the time, enters the picture. Kim goes on a talk show and implies that Taylor is lying. She suggests that Taylor knew exactly what was in the song. She calls Taylor a snake. And then, and this is the moment that breaks the internet, Kim Kardashian posts a video. A recording, apparently taken without Taylor's knowledge, of a phone call between Kanye and Taylor discussing the song. The internet explodes. Within hours, Taylor's social media pages are flooded with snake emojis. Millions of them. Everywhere she posts, every comment, every tweet, snake after snake after snake. The hashtag Taylor Swift is over trends worldwide. People are posting videos of snakes. Sending her snake images. Calling her a liar, a manipulator, a calculated celebrity who engineered her own victimhood. 4 weeks, then months, Taylor Swift is the most mocked, most criticized, most dragged celebrity on the internet. She goes silent. She disappears from social media. From interviews. From public life. For almost a year, Taylor Swift is basically invisible. And here's what that silence actually was. That silence was Taylor Swift loading a gun. August 2017. After almost a year of saying nothing publicly, Taylor's social media accounts go completely dark. No posts. The profile pictures turn black. The bios are wiped. Then a video starts circulating. A short, cryptic video. Just darkness, and then a tail. Something moving in the dark. Something that looks like a snake. Taylor Swift's comeback is being announced with a snake. She's taking back the image they tried to use to destroy her. The album comes out in November 2017. It's called Reputation. And Reputation is not the Taylor Swift anyone expected. This is not curly hair and sundresses. This is black leather and snakes and teeth. This is an artist who has taken 2 years of being called a snake and a liar and a villain, and turned it into the angriest, sharpest, most musically complex thing she's ever made. Look What You Made Me Do. The first single. Released overnight with no warning. The video drops at the VMAs, of all places, the same stage where Kanye took her microphone 8 years earlier. The song is a message. The video is a message. There's a scene where multiple versions of Taylor are piled on top of each other, and the one at the very bottom, the old Taylor, the sweet country girl, looks up and says, "I'm sorry, the old Taylor can't come to the phone right now." Why? Oh, 'cause she's dead. The internet, which spent a year dragging her, doesn't quite know what to do with this. Some people think it's genius. Some people think it's forced. Some people think she's being dramatic. But here's what everyone agrees on: reputation sells. It sells enormously. The tour for Reputation becomes one of the highest-grossing tours in history at that time. She sells out stadiums every single night. The people showing up are not just fans, they're making a statement. We are still here. We have not abandoned her. And Taylor, performing every night in a stadium full of people who chose her when the world turned on her, feels something she'll spend the next several years trying to articulate in her music. Gratitude. And a very clear understanding of who her real people are. Here's the thing about Taylor's story that makes it different from most celebrity stories. Most celebrities, when they face a massive public moment of humiliation, either fight it loudly or retreat completely. They either go to war in the press or they disappear. Taylor does something more complicated. She absorbs it. She lets it sit. She processes it privately. And then she turns it into art. And the art is always the comeback. But before her next major artistic comeback, something happens that shakes her in a completely different way. Something that isn't about image or feuds or internet drama. Something that is about money and power and the ownership of her own work. This is the story of the Masters. When Taylor signed with Big Machine Records as a 14-year-old, she signed a contract. This is normal. Every artist signs a contract with their record label. But there's something in most recording contracts that many people outside the music industry don't know about. The label owns the master recordings. What does that mean? It means the original recorded tracks, the actual recordings of your songs, belong to the label, not you. You can still perform the songs. You still wrote the songs. But the recordings themselves, those belong to the label. This is the standard deal. It's been standard for decades. Most artists accept it because when you're 14 and someone is offering you a record deal, you're not thinking about who owns what 30 years later. Taylor had always said publicly that she wanted to own her masters. It was something she cared deeply about. And she had an understanding, not in writing, but an understanding, with Scott Borchetta, the founder of Big Machine, that she would eventually be able to buy them back. In 2018, Taylor's contract with Big Machine ends. She is a free agent. She signs with a new label, Republic Records, under Universal Music Group. And with this new deal, she negotiates something historic. She will own the master recordings of all future albums going forward. But the 6 albums she made at Big Machine? Those masters still belong to Big Machine. And then, in June 2019, Scott Borchetta sells Big Machine Records, including all of Taylor's masters. All 6 albums. All the recordings. He sells them to Scooter Braun. Scooter Braun is a music manager. He manages Justin Bieber and several other major artists. And Taylor Swift has, over the years, made it very clear that she and Scooter Braun do not get along. There is history. There is tension. There are documented moments of conflict. And now Scooter Braun owns her music. Taylor finds out about the sale the same way the public finds out about it, by reading about it online. She posts a statement on Tumblr. And it is one of the most raw, emotional, unguarded public statements she has ever made. She calls it her worst-case scenario. She describes feeling sad and grossed out. She says she had been trying to negotiate a purchase of her masters for years and that Borchetta had always said he would never sell them to her enemies. She says she had no warning, no chance to buy them, no seat at the table. The music industry responds with a mix of sympathy and discomfort. Because what happened to Taylor is not unusual, it's actually very common. Artists lose their masters all the time. But what is unusual is that it happened to someone this famous, this powerful, this willing to talk about it publicly. Scooter Braun makes a statement. Scott Borchetta makes a statement. They dispute her account of events. The back and forth plays out in the press for months. And then Taylor Swift, in true Taylor Swift fashion, does the most audacious, most extraordinary thing imaginable. She decides to re-record every single album. All 6 of them. From scratch. Think about what this means for a moment. Taylor Swift decides that since she can't own the original recordings, she will simply make new ones. She will go into the studio and re-record every song from every album. Taylor Swift, Fearless, Speak Now, Red, 1989, Reputation, note for note, vocal for vocal, with every single detail intact. And she will own these new versions completely. And then she will ask her fans, and the music industry, to stream the new versions instead of the old ones. It's brilliant. It is absolutely brilliant. Because the value of a master recording is in the streaming revenue, in the sync deals, in the licensing. If everyone switches to streaming the new versions, Taylor's version, as she calls them, then the old masters that Scooter Braun owns become essentially worthless. It had never been done before. Not at this scale. Not by someone this famous. The re-recording strategy was a legal clause that existed in contracts, but no one had ever used it as aggressively, as publicly, or as successfully as Taylor Swift does. She starts with Fearless. Fearless, Taylor's version, comes out in April 2021. And not only does she re-record every original song, she goes into the vault. She releases songs that were written during the Fearless era but never put on the album. Songs that have been sitting on a hard drive for 12 years. The fans go absolutely insane. Then Speak Now, Taylor's version. Then Red, Taylor's version. And Red is when the world truly understands what Taylor Swift is doing. Because Red, Taylor's version, includes, in its full complete form, the song that fans have been whispering about for nearly a decade. All Too Well, 10-minute version. The 10-minute version of All Too Well drops in November 2021 alongside Red, Taylor's version. And the reaction is unlike anything that has happened in music in a very long time. People stop what they are doing. People pull over their cars to listen. People sit at their desks at work with headphones in, tears running silently down their faces, trying not to make a scene. 10 minutes. 10 minutes of one of the most specific, devastating, beautifully constructed breakup songs ever recorded. Not a wasted line. Not a filler verse. Every single word precise and earned and real. Taylor also makes a short film to go with the song. She directs it. It stars Dylan O'Brien and Sadie Sink. And it is genuinely, objectively good filmmaking. Not good for a music video. Actually good. Festival-quality filmmaking. All Too Well, 10-minute version, debuts at #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. It becomes the longest song in history to ever hit #1. At 10 minutes and 13 seconds, it breaks a record that had stood for 50 years. Taylor Swift wins a chart record with a song she wrote when she was 20 years old that she never let anyone hear the full version of. If that's not the most Taylor Swift thing that has ever happened, I don't know what is. But we're getting ahead of ourselves, because before all of that re-recording era begins, something happens to the whole world that changes everything. COVID-19. Lockdown. Concerts cancel. Tours are postponed. Every arena in every country goes dark. The music industry essentially stops functioning. For most artists, this is devastating. For Taylor Swift, it turns out to be something unexpected. It becomes creative freedom. Without tours to plan for, without a specific sound to aim for, without the pressure of a carefully orchestrated rollout, Taylor goes into a studio. Actually into a home studio, because of the pandemic, with her longtime collaborator Jack Antonoff and a new collaborator named Aaron Dessner from the band The National. And she makes something completely different from anything she's made before. On July 23, 2020, Taylor Swift announces a new album on social media. It is called Folklore, and it will be released in less than 24 hours. No press tour. No single drops. No countdown. No performances. Just, here's the album, it comes out tonight. The music world's jaw hits the floor. Folklore is nothing like 1989. Nothing like Reputation. Nothing like anything Taylor has ever released. It's quiet. It's literary. It's indie folk adjacent, built on piano and acoustic guitar and Aaron Dessner's atmospheric production. The lyrics are the most sophisticated she's ever written. There are fictional characters, interlocking storylines, references to classic literature. There's a song called August that is written from the perspective of the other woman in a love triangle. The same love triangle is explored from 3 different perspectives across 3 songs: Cardigan, Auguste, and Betty, and each song is a complete story on its own, but together they form something richer and more complex. Critics, who had sometimes been lukewarm on Taylor's pop albums, go essentially wild. Rolling Stone gives it 5 stars. The New York Times raves about it. Music critics who had spent years writing condescending think pieces about whether Taylor Swift is really an artist suddenly have to reckon with an album that is unambiguously, undeniably, artistically serious. Folklore becomes the best-reviewed album of Taylor's career. And then, 5 months later, in December 2020, she does it again. Evermore. A sister album to Folklore, similar in sound, equally as introspective. She calls it the sister record to Folklore, saying she didn't want to close the door on that creative world too quickly. 2 albums in 1 year. 2 critically acclaimed, deeply personal, sonically adventurous albums in 1 year. During a global pandemic. While also fighting a public legal battle over the ownership of her masters. Now we need to talk about the Grammys again. Because the Grammys, in the story of Taylor Swift, keep happening. In March 2021, Taylor Swift wins Album of the Year for Folklore. She becomes the first person in history, not the first woman, the first person, to win Album of the Year 3 times. 3 times. In the entire history of the Grammy Awards, nobody has won Album of the Year 3 times. Nobody. She does it at 31 years old. There are artists who spent entire careers chasing a single Grammy. There are legends of music who won once and called it the pinnacle of their professional life. Taylor Swift wins the biggest Grammy available 3 times, for 3 completely different sonic styles: country, pop, and indie folk. She gets up on that stage and she thanks the fans and she thanks her collaborators and she talks about making the album in isolation, and you can see on her face the full weight of what has happened over the last 12 years. This is not the 19-year-old who cried on the stage at the Country Music Awards. This is a woman who has been through a war, multiple wars, and is still standing, still winning, and she knows exactly how improbable that is. But here's the thing. Even after all of that, after the re-recordings, after 3 Album of the Year wins, after Folklore and Evermore, the biggest chapter of Taylor Swift's story hasn't started yet. In October 2022, Taylor Swift releases her 10th studio album. She calls it Midnights. The promotional campaign for Midnights is, depending on how you feel about marketing, either genius or exhausting, but probably genius. Taylor counts down to the album with a series of TikTok videos called Midnight's Mayhem with Me, where she pulls ping-pong balls out of a velvet bag each night to reveal a track name. She builds suspense masterfully, night after night, for weeks. Midnights drops at midnight. Obviously. And then, at 3 a.m., when most of the world is asleep, Taylor Swift drops 7 more songs. Without any warning whatsoever. She calls it the 3 a.m. edition. The streaming services essentially break. Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, all of them struggle under the weight of millions of people trying to listen at the same time. Midnights breaks the record for the most streamed album in Spotify history on its first day. Then it breaks the record for the most streamed album in a single week in Spotify history. So where does the story end? Honestly, it doesn't. Not yet. Not even close. There are still re-recordings to release. There are still albums to make. There is a tour that has rewritten the record books. There is a generation of young fans who are growing up with Taylor Swift as their first real musical touchstone, the way other generations grew up with the Beatles or Michael Jackson or Madonna. The little girl from Pennsylvania who showed up in Nashville at 14 with a guitar and a dream that everyone said was too big has become something that, honestly, is hard to even put into words. Not just an artist. Not just a celebrity. Something more than that. She has become, in a very real sense, a cultural institution. A living, touring, re-recording, chart-topping, stadium-filling, economy-altering cultural institution. And she's not done. She is never done. Because that is the most essential thing you need to understand about Taylor Swift, after everything, after the feuds and the heartbreaks and the betrayals and the comebacks. She never stops. Not when they took her microphone. Not when they took her masters. Not when they called her a snake. Not when they declared her over. She just keeps going. She keeps writing. She keeps making music. She keeps filling those stadiums, keeps selling out those shows, keeps putting on that sequin suit and walking out into the light and doing it all over again. 3.5 hours, every night, 4 years. For the people who have been with her since Tim McGraw. For the people who found her during Reputation when they needed someone who understood being the villain of someone else's story. For the people who discovered her during the pandemic when they needed folklore's quiet magic. For the kids who are going to their first Eras tour show, wearing their friendship bracelets, not yet knowing what this music is going to mean to them over the next 20 years. Taylor Swift puts on the show every night for all of them. And every night, 70,000 people in a stadium somewhere in the world scream every word of every song right back at her. And the ground shakes. And that's the story. That's the real story.